Up next, a conversation on access and innovation in pharmacy. Please welcome Josh Fritzler, CFO of Olympia and Wesley, Nate Hill, co-founder and CEO of Strive, John Lensing, co-founder and CEO of OpenLoop, and moderator Bigham Buer, founder and CEO, Ways to Well.
All right, the clock's ticking, so we'll get started. I think the best way to start this is for each of us to go around and talk about our experience, how we ended up here, and where compounding has a place in the future of medicine. So for me personally, I was involved in the Senate hearing last year where I met a lot of these other moderators and folks talking on this stage today, and I had the privilege and honor of getting to see firsthand behind the scene the level of fighting and hard work and dedication that Marty and Secretary Kennedy and this team has put in place to fight for accessibility and affordability of treatments for the American people. So I'm founder of Ways to Well. I also own a small compounding pharmacy in Houston, Texas, and I'll let everyone go around and introduce themselves.
John Lensing started a company called OpenLoop. We are a lot of the infrastructure that powers digital health companies out there. We see and treat on average about 500,000 to 1 million patients a month right now, and compounding is obviously a very large part of the regimen of what we recommend to patients.
Nate Hill, co-founder and CEO of Strive Pharmacy, founded the company out of Gilbert, Arizona, and we've grown to 8 locations, almost 9 throughout the United States. We serve every state in the U.S., and yeah, we're focused on personalized medicine. We do work with doctors and providers that have patients with unique needs where commercial products aren't available for them, that don't meet those needs that they have, and so they come to compound pharmacies to create a personalized approach and a personalized plan to meet their healthcare goals.
Awesome. My name is Josh Fritzler. I'm the CFO of Wesley and Olympia Pharmaceuticals. We have 2 503Bs in Orlando, Florida, and 1 503A. We are not our own name, the national experts of 503B outsourcing facilities. We service urology clinics, weight loss clinics, vein care clinics, dermatology, and we're most proud of the 1,000+ health systems and hospitals that we service every single day. We make about 150 to 200,000 sterile injectables each week, and it's an honor to sit up here with you guys and have the platform on compounding. We really appreciate it.
I think a good starting point would be to educate the crowd and folks who may not even know what a compounding pharmacy is, because I think until a few years ago, it was a huge source of cost-effective medications for the public, but it was flying under the radar. And in this new world, there's a lot more exposure. So I'd love for you to touch on the difference between an A and a B and just give people a little insight.
Yeah. Sure, I can lead us. Okay. So 503B, it's a drug manufacturer. We run in parallel with large pharmaceutical manufacturers in the country. Olympia itself, we are audited around 20 times a year, most of which are state audits, and then we do every 12 to 18 months by the federal government, the FDA, and that's very similar with the pharmaceutical manufacturers you're used to with the generic brand manufacturers. With that, there's a lot of transparency in what we do. When it comes to every single drug we manufacture or produce or dispense, we have to register it with the FDA, and we have to tell them about any adverse events immediately. This information is public and very transparent for the market, which I think is really important for patients, physicians, and clinics to be able to see who's manufacturing their drugs. Just like Big Pharma's FDA audit, we call it a regulatory colonoscopy. So they totally open us up, and they get to see absolutely everything we do, from our name tags to our cleaning validations to our machines. This is kind of where the parallel between large pharma and us end. Our transparency, our colonoscopy is in a room full of every person you've ever met, meaning our studies and our audits are public. So if you're a patient, you want to check on our report card, you have access to see exactly what we made, exactly what the FDA thinks of us, and what is made in that product. Through the Freedom of Information Act request, it takes years for a large generic compounding or a pharmaceutical manufacturer to send that information. So if my dad was looking to look into a product from a generic manufacturer and really see, hey, I wonder what the report card is of this brand and manufacturer, he's probably not going to wait 3 years to see before he takes that product. And for me, I think as we push towards American citizens being familiar of what they're putting into their body, a 503B's transparency is second to none, and I think it really adds access to be able to see what we're using. And that we're really proud of that, and that's essentially what we do.
Awesome. Yeah, I can touch on a 503A compounding pharmacy. So our pharmacy requires a prescription. So the very fact that this prescription categorizes it as being personalized, that you have to go to a doctor and you have to work with that doctor and come up with some health plan, and then they're going to prescribe that medication to our pharmacy. And a lot of the providers that we work with will do blood work, they'll do levels on hormones, and then they'll send that prescription to our pharmacy. So when we were founded, my business partner, he's a pharmacist. I did pharmaceutical sales prior to starting the business, but so he had to educate me and help me understand what a compound pharmacy was. And so initially, my understanding of it was that we did hormone replacement therapy and medications that helped with erections. So it's a lot more than that. But one thing important to point out is, the relationship between a doctor and a patient, we believe, is sacred. I think everyone has an experience in their lives or in the life of someone that's close to them that has sought after an answer to symptoms that they're having. Someone said it earlier up on stage, where when you have a certain condition, it's all that you think about, and you're going to go every length to try to find an answer. And I think we all can agree that big pharmaceutical companies don't have the solution for everything. There are a lot of amazing products out there, but they don't have the answer for everything. And so when patients are so unique and so individualized, and we're made up of different things, and we metabolize differently, we methylate differently, then it makes sense that patients should have a unique prescription to take care of whatever their healthcare needs are. And so that's where a compound pharmacy, a 503A, steps in. It's for unique needs that aren't commercially available, that aren't on the market. And so we're able to order in the raw ingredient or the API, active pharmaceutical ingredient, and we're able to make it up in whether they're capsules, creams, injections, lozenges that dissolve under the tongue. There's so many different variations and formulas that we can make up in our pharmacies. But it's really a relationship between the doctor and the patient, but also with our pharmacy and with our pharmacists, where they can work directly with that doctor and listen to the doctor. The doctor's the one that has spent so much time with that patient and has listened to them when they've gone to so many different, the traditional healthcare route and haven't received any answers. And then they finally find a doctor that's willing to listen to them. And that doctor is saying, I need to send you to a compound pharmacy because you have something unique going on there's nothing commercially available that's going to be able to treat that need.
And the problem with that from a medical lens is, when I was going through medical school, we spent 5, maybe 10 minutes talking about compounding. It all came down to, look at the patient, what's the pattern, treat it with the same old drug that we've always used forever. It was only after, sort of wrapping up grad school, that compounding became more knowledgeable to, I think, the general public. And instead of treating the pattern that we see all the time in the market now, it's like, let's look at you as an individual. Let's see what you specifically need. What sort of comorbidities do you have? What are you deficient in? Let's build a drug that's highly tailored to you as an individual, rather than trying to mass produce something that, maybe only 50% of people really need.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think a huge part of the boom that people have seen is also in the peptide space, which we were talking about backstage. 1.7 million Americans are dying every year of preventable chronic disease. We know that diet, lifestyle, and nutrition are crucial, but it's also crucial to provide patients with accessibility and affordability to cutting-edge care. And if we're truly going to get proactive, predictive, and personalized, which is the only way we're going to prevent the chronic disease crisis, it involves patients having easily accessible care with their clinician and cutting-edge treatment modalities. So if you want to talk a little bit more about what you've seen in your practice and where you've utilized some of these treatments and the benefits you've seen, I think that would be.
I mean, look, we power some of the largest telehealth companies out there. Hundreds of thousands of patients coming in and flocking to telehealth every single day. And that's because they desire two things. They want convenience, which they're not getting from traditional healthcare. They're waiting 3 months to book an appointment. They're getting tossed around between this clinic, this specialist, somebody else before they get an answer. And then they're sent to a pharmacy to finally get their prescription. And the other thing that they really desire is transparency, right? How many people under the age of 45 now even know what a deductible is? And if they do, what their deductible is and how much is left on that remaining for the year. They would rather go online, pay $100 out of pocket, and know exactly what they're going to get, see a doctor that exact same day, meet with them for however long that they need, get the prescription that they want, shipped and sent to their door on their doorstep in 48 hours, and know exactly what it's going to cost them, right? It's convenience, it's accessibility, and that's why I think, American public's lost a lot of trust in just our traditional healthcare systems.
And how many times does a doctor prescribe a medication to a patient only to find out that their insurance doesn't cover it, right? And so even if it is what the doctor is prescribing for that patient, doesn't mean the patient's going to get it, doesn't mean that the patient is going to be able to afford it, and so it ends up going down the...
1/3 of every prescription that's written in the US doesn't get picked up. Because that's inconvenient. It's inconvenient. If something is so imperative to our life, like healthcare is, you need to embed it into the daily lives of the patients. You need to make it the most convenient, most accessible thing possible. And as of right now, the actual end consumers of our healthcare system, it doesn't work for them.
What a lot of people don't realize, and the only reason I know this is from owning retail pharmacies that attempted to build the insurance companies. The insurance companies not only set the reimbursement rate, they dictate what is covered. And that is not dictated by what's best for the patient, but what's most profitable for the pocketbook.
Sure.
And so the insurance scheme is so much bigger than big pharma and insurance in that it's a layered approach. And for a patient to navigate that is almost impossible. And that's where I think that having cash pay, cost-effective solutions that provide accessibility are crucial.
I think you brought up GLPs first. In the beginning of this discussion, I think what it did is give a lot of confidence in compounding. I mean, our pharmacy serviced 150,000 patients a week for 2 years on GLPs, and with that transparency I mentioned above, with insurance not even being a factor, and we're providing life-saving medicine for 1/10 of the cost. So I do think all of that plays into the transparency of what we're able to provide, especially the US manufacturing of what we can do, the affordability and the accessibility. I think the four of us are all aligned that that's exactly what we're all bringing to this table.
Like you said, there's too many people with their hands in the pot right now. That's what's made it so inconvenient for patients. You got PBMs that need their take, you got third-party payers that need their take, you got hospital margins that are crushed, doctors that are burned out, patients that are pissed off. Right, where I think all of us up here on stage are interested in stripping it back to the basics. Put the patient at the center of it, bring in the doctor relationship, and get them the medication that's tailored to them individually, that's gonna work for them.
And we talked about this. I love it. You're spot on, and we talked about this at the Senate level too. You've listened to so many of these moderators and speakers today, and they talk about the system is broken. The system is broken. And I said this at the Senate, it's not broken, it's rigged. And we're fitting the bill, and we're fitting the bill on American lives and lost loved ones. And it's because the system is so controlled and captured from every aspect of the system. And this is one of the last standing beacons that give patients a life raft, whether we're talking telemedicine and accessibility or compounding and making unique solutions to patients mailed to their doorstep. I want you to share some of your experiences on how you've seen the endpoint of patient feedback, and you had mentioned earlier back there how many patients have reached out and thanked you for what you're doing and providing them solutions.
Yeah, I mean, some people may know, but we're in a big lawsuit with a big, large pharmaceutical company that's coming after us and, trying to shut down where these prescriptions are coming from. And, we turned it into a PR campaign and rallied everyone behind us. I think it's very, it's motivating, and, as a leader of a compound pharmacy that has not only patients across the United States, but also employees, that this is their livelihood. But, we ended up turning into a PR campaign and asking for testimonials from people on how compounding has changed their lives. And the amount of support that we receive from patients and providers encouraging us to fight for compounding rights and personalized medicine. That's what the lawsuit is regarding. It's us stating that we, in our marketing, that we offer personalized medicine, and that is the epitome of a compound pharmacy. And so, guilty as charged. So.
There's a lot of bad information out there on the safety of compounding, and I saw even in the press conference the other day, they tried to sneak in or mention they're not safe. So I'd love for one of y'all to touch on what is the difference between a major manufacturing facility and a compounding pharmacy, and what safety nets do you have in place to protect the consumer?
Yeah, touch on that.
I mean, the parallels are astronomical when it comes to who are regulated by, from every state we send products to the FDA and the federal government, who are in our facility once or twice a year. And like I mentioned before, our audits are public. It would take years for you to get a public audit for any of these branded manufacturers, especially the one that you're being sued by. And you can go and see our report card immediately. So for me, our safety is exactly the same level of current good manufacturing processes that we have to follow to make these products. And then you can see how we did. You can go online and see how you did. Every patient, every provider, every hospital, every health system has access to our certificate of analysis. So anytime we make a lot of vials, let's say we make 10,000 sterile injectables, they're able to see every single C of A for every batch we make. There's not that level of transparency in pharmaceutical unless you're a 503B. And I think with that, we're servicing health systems across the country with a safe product that's obvious. We've passed the test and we're showing you we've passed the test. I can't tell you what the test looks like for the other pharmaceutical manufacturers. I can't.
I can tell you a mind-blowing statistic is there's over 2,300 major Big Pharma manufacturing facilities that have not been inspected in 5 or more years. Whereas the FDA has been in our building 3 times in 18 months.
Right.
I think that the FDA is doing a great job of making sure that they regulate and thoroughly inspect compounders and 503As and Bs. Where it gets a little more tricky is when you do go to Big Pharma, where they move their manufacturing facilities overseas and play the whole dog and pony and try and make it so difficult to come inspect their facilities. What are your thoughts on what you're seeing at the A level?
Yeah, on the 503A level, we have to do smaller batches than the outsourcing facilities, and so each one of those batches, though, within our pharmacy, we're sending that out to get tested for endotoxin, sterility, potency. We're held to shorter beyond use, beyond use dates. And so, we're regulated by state boards of pharmacy. I think the other unique thing about compound pharmacies is their regulators can and will stop in without any notice. You have to be ready for an inspection without any warning, where a lot of these big manufacturing, like big pharmaceutical companies, get a notice before they show up and inspect their facilities. And so all that, from us up on this stand, I think that we're just asking that they're held to the same standards as the compound pharmacies, when in reality, we welcome the scrutiny. We understand that we're dealing with patients' lives and patients' care, and we want to offer the best product that we can to them. I think one thing that we want to do as well is to applaud HHS, Secretary Kennedy, Dr. Marty Makary for the green list and on GLP-1s. So there's been a lot of misrepresentation, disparagement of our industry by these big pharmaceutical companies, stating that we're making counterfeit knockoff products. This green list provided a list that showed where the active pharmaceutical ingredient is coming from, is registered and inspected by the FDA. And surprise, we are already working with those companies, and it's the same companies that big pharmaceutical companies are getting their supply from as well.
Exactly, and just to touch on the ingredients that we're getting and what we're using with our transparency, there's over 300 items in shortage. Sure, we mentioned 2 as in the GLPs, and Olympia service, like I mentioned, 150,000 patients a week. Once these were deemed no longer in shortage, we probably got 2,000-3,000 calls a day, not customers excited that the branded medication's back, paranoid and nervous that they can't afford the branded medication once it's back. So not only are we filling a void from a shortage perspective and what's available, we're providing access to affordable medication. And So a recent poll came out that 40%, around 39.5% of all hospital systems are using 503Bs for medications that they're administering. So the same people who are saying that 503B compounding or compounding in general is unsafe, we're saving America by, that's 40% of what we're giving to all of our hospital systems. And I mean, with the show of hands, I can only imagine everyone's been to a hospital, everyone's seen an IV bag. 503Bs make up 40% of what's out there. And if you have a child who has severe influenza, the branded manufacturer that was making the cure, the albuterol for severe influenza, went bankrupt. The only reason we at hospitals now have that product available is through 503B manufacturing, and we're incredibly proud to be able to offer these products. So to your point of unsafe manufacturing, how are we saving 40% of the lives with our medication for all the hospital systems in America? However, if we make GLPs, it's not safe. So for me, I think it's intuitive to be the exact same level of compounded manufacturing that's saving America, to be honest.
The safety conversation needs to be even broader. You know, this smear campaign that's going on by a lot of the large pharmaceutical companies against people like Olympia and Strive here is forcing patients to actually go online and buy research-grade drugs, right? Ones that aren't regulated by the FDA, ones that aren't inspected by the state boards of pharmacy. Like you were telling us backstage, 4 out of 5 peptides that are sold are now research grade. You know, no regulation, no testing done on them. And you want to talk about safety? That's a huge safety issue to patients. And these people right here, they're doing something legal, they're doing something compliant, and they're doing something that's incredibly beneficial for the patients.
Amen.
I think the future's bright with peptides. The administration is aware of the issue and has thankfully had tons of meetings. And
who wants peptides?
Yeah.
Right?
And one of the nuanced discussions that, and I heard somebody allude to this earlier, they mentioned nobody has a GLP-1 deficiency. And that was one of the things when I was talking with Secretary Kennedy that I mentioned is when you look at peptides, they're short chain amino acids that are building blocks. You know, the difference between the big pharmaceutical conglomerates selling you Prozac or an antidepressant, nobody's deficient in an antidepressant. But we do know factually, and we can assess your blood work and tell you if you're deficient in certain things and help optimize your health. And that's how you get proactive, predictive, and preventative. You don't wait for chronic disease to show up on your doorstep. You have all the tell signs, and the issues that develop in your 30s started in your 20s. The issues that develop in your 40s started in your 30s. With platforms like yours, compounding pharmacies, and our ability to provide patients with cutting-edge care, we can drive down the cost of healthcare. And you drive it down by preventing the chronic disease from ever occurring in the first place.
For sure.
And if you actually want to get to an era of preventative care like you've touched on, you got to put the patient at the center, right? How many times have we showed up at a hospital, said, hey, I have this issue that I want to talk about, but the doctor, somebody else is like, I got 5 minutes, we're going to talk about this. Right, I'm here to talk about my weight. No, your lipids are too high or your creatinine's too high, right? The patients are so educated nowadays, they're coming in and they know exactly what they want treated. They know, you know, this is the biggest priority for me in my health journey right now. It's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If I don't meet my basic needs, food, water, shelter, you can't even start talking about self-actualization and everything else. So if we have a patient that comes in that says, hey, you know, I'm 200 pounds overweight, you don't talk about their kidney function. You don't want to talk about their heart health. You don't want to talk about anything else. Like, treat them for why they're there. Get them happy, get them healthy, and now they'll start talking with you about everything else underneath the sun. They want the preventative care. Now they want to know what their lab values are. Now they want to know everything else. Like, treat the individual.
I think that's spot on. The biggest thing I've seen in healthcare is in the traditional system, patients feel like they're a passenger being led on a ride. Yeah. And when you bring them into the preventative world, the functional medicine world, you allow patients to be a driver of their journey. And they're deciding that decision side by side with the clinician, which is one of the things that's amazing about this administration. They've made it abundantly clear that they want clinicians and patients to be making decisions with autonomy and sovereignty over their health.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, when you think about someone who has a story of searching for that solution for some condition that they have, that they're not getting the answers from the traditional healthcare route, and they finally find it, And I'm not saying every time it's going to be through a compound pharmacy, but sometimes it's through a more holistic approach. But I think patients and providers should have the medical freedom to decide what makes sense for the patient. It's like you have a provider that's actually listening to the patient, listening to their symptoms, listening to like what their health goals are, and you can't do that from, you know, large-scale blanketed mass production. And especially like if we've been talking about with all these panels, there's so much going on with data and AI that's creating even more of a personalized approach. And so you would have to use a compound pharmacy to tailor to that patient's needs. Something that's interesting, you know, just because of anyone who has used a compound pharmacy, I think you could relate to this. We had our first, you know, our lawsuit was dismissed out of Delaware. It's been refiled in Arizona, but the Judge Bibas out of Delaware, he said patients, when he dismissed it, he said patients with allergies and unique needs where FDA approved products are unsuitable, he said compounding is a godsend. And I think that was a strong statement. We actually turned it into merch and we have hats for it. But regardless, you know, not only is compounding a godsend, I think what MAHA is doing, the MAHA movement, Secretary Kennedy, I think we can all agree that they're a godsend as well.
We only got a few minutes left. I don't know if you want to give one thing that you're excited about with the MAHA movement and where you think this is headed.
Sure. I think policy, number one, I think being able to understand what the 503B does to our hospital industry and the products that we're able to produce at such a high level under the same scrutiny. I also know, like you mentioned, those peptides. My grandma's on BPC right now from a research grade pharmacy, and I'm dying to be able to have us make it for her because it works. And it's just one example of these products that can change people's lives that I'm hoping with this MAHA organization, what we can do, we can really push policy to get better medicine for people.
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, something that I'm excited about and motivated about is just the stories that need to be told. They were talking about on the last panel, Dr. Marty Makary, just about the pharmaceutical commercials and how everyone's skipping down the street. And we got to do better. I mean, with medications that we offer, they're literally life-changing. And those stories need to be told. And I think that's something that drives Strive Pharmacy, is to tell those stories because people need to know about some of these options because it's literally helping people change their lives. And so, you know, I look at this MAHA movement more of like a health revival, but you know, there's so many different people with different backgrounds and different industries that are coming together. But I know that if we work together, we can defy the odds and create generational health.
Yeah, I think Vice President and Secretary Kennedy said it best. Like this administration is taking a bulldozer to a lot of the dogma that we've believed for years, right? And there's new data coming out, there's new evidence coming out, and I think a lot of us in this room can agree that traditional healthcare has failed the end consumer. It's failed the patients in so many ways. And I like your word. It's rigged against them, right? This administration is trying to reset that. They're trying to revitalize it and put health back in the patient's hands. And I think that's the most exciting thing as a provider myself.
I think the future's bright. This administration understands the space and the sector and truly wants to get proactive, predictive, and preventative. And that's the way we're going to fight this chronic disease crisis. So we're out of time. Thank you guys for everything.
Thank you.